All the second stage tanks now pressurized. Astronauts report it feels good. T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal. 12, 11, 10, 9. Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Like a furry torpedo to the jugular. This is Honey Badger Radio. Radio with bite.
Hello and welcome to HBR Talk 360. Now mourns the loss of their cash cows. This is going to be a moving show. I had to do it. Y'all know me. I'm your host, Hannah Wallen, here with Nonsense Annihilator, Lauren Brooks, and the personification of perceptivity, Mike Stevenson. And tonight...
Hello!
Hello, guys. The Toxic Sisterhood of the National Organization for Women has some complaints about the current administration. They has a sad. We're going to hear them out. But before we get into it, we've got to do what we've got to do. As always, Honey Badger Radio dishes out a smorgasbord of thought-provoking discussions, and as experiences both recent and long past have demonstrated, the provoked thoughts are fighting back. They've made it clear that for people like us, relying on third-party payment platforms like Patreon to fund our work is treading on thin ice, or building our house in the path of a rapidly growing wildfire. In light of this, we strongly encourage our supporters to switch at least their support for us to feedthebadger.com, the most stable way to help us out. And if you want to tip us directly instead of relying on any social media platform's tip jar, the link for that is feedthebadger.com/justatip. And as always, the same risk applies to our social media platforms, which is why you should further provoke the thought police by tracking our thought-provoking discussions on honeybadgerbrigade.com, where you can find your way to all of our content, as well as a link to feedthebadger.com in the drop-down menu at the top of the page. And we'll see. I keep saying I'm going to end up getting myself banned from something here or there. Today, I actually, I really wasn't today. It was yesterday. I lost my temper with a chick for saying that a baby should have died. And somebody suggested she visit Saudi Arabia. I said, why not Iran?
Are we going to talk about what happened in the UK recently, or is that just a peripheral subject?
What?
It depends on what you are. We talking about the abortion law?
There are some states.
There
are some states in the US where they're allowed to kill their babies up until birth, and it's not decriminalized. And that just happened in my own country of birth.
Yeah,
that's not the main subject of tonight. But I guess we'll get onto it.
The National Organization for Women was one of the big organizations that pushed for abortion in the United States and all over the world. They're big supporters of Planned Parenthood, and as we have pointed out in previous shows when we were talking about USA funding different things from the U.S. AIDS infection around the world to other departments, including the Department of Defense, the Department of Education, Agricultural Department. Like, it seems like every department in the U.S. government has had some involvement that they've funded exporting the National Organization for Women's and Planned Parenthood's agenda to make as much money as possible by killing babies. And the UK has not been spared. There have been initiatives from the United States, funded by the United States government, that funded this. So just as a continuation of what we've been talking about, there is a connection here between that funding that we've previously talked about, the National Organization for Women that we're talking about currently, in that particular subject. And the thing that makes me go off about it is this, right? And I've said this probably a million times. I started really getting heated about it I want to say 2019, after the 2019 ICMI. There's a lot of different theories on what can solve this problem, and it's in my opinion, it's all excuses for women one way or another. That between the theory that we need to make men more responsible for women than they already are by taking away women's rights and freedoms, because women just can't help themselves. Like, I'm all for exploring that idea because women are refusing to help themselves. But I don't believe women can't help themselves. I think that this is something that women should be culpable for. And if women lose a lot of their rights because of this type of behavior, it's women's fault. And I'm saying that as somebody who would be losing those rights, and I recognize that. But it is a matter of life or death, literally, for a huge chunk of the world population. Women have made being aborted the leading cause of human death in the world. Leading. More babies are aborted than people die in wars. More babies are aborted than people die from heart conditions or starvation, all of the conditions that are caused by poverty. More babies are aborted than people die from cancer. More babies are aborted than people died from COVID. Right? All the things, the big scary things that people, oh, this is terrible, we're going to see mass death. More babies have been aborted than that. That's a horrible thing. That's a horrible thing to know about your own sex. Right? Men built things like the Sistine Chapel. Men built hospitals and roadways and things that take us into outer space.
People have understood
women killed more human beings before they were ever born than any other cause in the world.
People have understood for some time, and by people I mean boomers, the people whom Gen X like to blame for everything. But boomers have understood for some time that one nightmare scenario is that your daughter comes to you saying, "I'm pregnant." But an even worse scenario is your son comes to you saying, "I got my daughter. I got my girlfriend pregnant." And in that situation, there's nothing they can do. Like if your daughter gets pregnant, then you have some options. But if your son gets his girlfriend pregnant, then your whole life, your whole future is in the hands of your son's girlfriend. Because she has all the options. He doesn't have any options. He can do his best to convince his girlfriend of what he wants to happen. But that's all he can do. He can try and convince his girlfriend of to whether he wants the baby to survive or whether he wants it not to. And we can argue about that till the cows come home. But at the end of the day, he doesn't get a choice. Like I say, even the boomers theoretically in charge cannot do anything about it if their son gets his girlfriend pregnant, because she has the power to decide whether your life is destroyed or not in one way or another, because either she could decide that she's going to have your son's baby and of all the implications that happens to that, or she decides not to have his baby and all the implications that comes with that. And yeah, in either case, it's a head fuck. But at the end of the day, it's her decision, and entirely her decision, and that has been the case for the last 50 years or so, or something like that.
In fact, in the United States, this is some history that if you're a millennial or a Zoomer, this is going to surprise you. abortion was not universally illegal before Roe versus Wade. In fact, the year prior to Roe versus Wade, there were almost as many abortions done as there were the year after. We're talking over 200,000 in the United States, and I think the top in the United States up until recently was in around 700,000 for in 1 year. So as it had it took quite a bit of time to get up there too, couple decades. But in any case, it's something that it wasn't being tracked for a long time, and then when they started tracking it, it was largely women going in to medical facilities with health conditions that the medical facility deemed a solid reason for her having an abortion. And depending on what state you were in, the reason could be anything from, if you try to carry this baby to term, you're going to die, to you feel bad about being pregnant and you might kill yourself. Right? Or it's affecting your mental health without any kind of actual life-threatening, right? So it's dishonest when abortion advocates act like abortion restriction was you can't get an abortion no matter what prior to Roe v. Wade, and afterward it saved all these women's lives. The reality was very different from that. And even the way that it's portrayed in Call Jane, I just the trailer for that contained a bunch of lies. So the film itself just is one big straw man full of falsehoods. And one of the big falsehoods was that, if a woman went to one hospital and tried to get an abortion done, she couldn't just go somewhere else for, a second opinion. And if they said no, and that it was common for hospitals to just say, no, we're not going to do that procedure if they were getting paid for it. The reality is hospitals have been, oh, you want to have a surgery? Yeah. Have you got this much money to pay for it? Okay, let's go. For quite a long time, because they want the money. And in fact, there's been an issue of hospitals doing unnecessary testing and unnecessary procedures for quite a long time because they want the money, especially now that insurance pays for a lot of stuff. But even just if they know you can pay out of pocket. So that the whole thing has been one big lie from the beginning. And now we're in a situation where we're talking about women having a medical hitman essentially assassinate their child in utero when the child is old enough to survive premature birth with medical assistance. And there's no arguing that is not a human being. There's no arguing that is not a living human being. And there's not really any arguing that is not a person either. It's not a valid argument anyway. The personhood argument doesn't actually mean anything. It's just an arbitrary concept.
You would think that, right? But if you look at where we are now, where we are questioning the very essence of what it is to be a man or a woman, like it doesn't seem that far-fetched for people to then question it if this living thing inside of my body is actually a human. You know what I mean? But God, how did we slide so far backwards? I don't understand.
This is another one millennials don't know, where the personhood argument actually originated. Do y'all know? Do y'all know where that came from? Do you want to know where that came from? Back in the day, This is what millennials like to use the phrase back in the day, right? Back in the day when Jim Crow was in full swing. Back in the day when the United States was actually a country where racism and religious discrimination were occurring on levels that were genuinely oppressive and genuinely detrimental to the lives of the people that they affected. In terms of legal status, in terms of their status as human beings with human rights, and in terms of being counted in a group of people, like a census, they counted black people as 3/4 of a person or 3/5 of a person, something like that, instead of a whole person, because they were considered less human. It originated in racism. It's being applied now to abortion, but it originated in racism. It originated in racial oppression. That's where it comes from. Feminists are using an argument that came from racial oppression to excuse killing babies.
And it's disheartening to see how many millennial YouTubers will look upon a map of European countries where doctors can still refuse to do an abortion. There's like 4 countries left in Europe where doctors can refuse to perform an abortion, and these millennials look upon that and they go, "Oh, that's so horrid that a doctor can go, yeah, I know you want this, but even though it's your body, I'm going to say I don't want to do that," which is the opposite of what's really going on. Any doctor should be able to refuse an abortion. They should be able to say, "I'm not going to perform this surgery on you because I don't have to." But so many people will say, you shouldn't get to refuse this surgery. You should have to perform your labor at the expense of any woman who wants to do so. It's her body. And the libertarian in me is going, actually, you don't get to demand anyone's labor. You don't get to demand the labor of a doctor. You don't get to say, no, you have to perform this abortion, whether you like it or not. And that's really what we're looking at. There's only like 4 countries left in Europe where a doctor can say, actually, you don't get my professional labor as a doctor to kill your child. And that's the right way around. That's like it.
Yeah.
Like I'm sort of torn on the on the deep down abortion issue as to whether a woman should or should not be able to get any surgery she wants. But when it comes to the doctor should be able to say yes or no. The doctor should be able to say, no, I'm not going to perform this surgery where we get some forceps and some fucking dodgy looking instruments and we cut your baby to pieces and pull it out. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? A doctor should be able to say, no, I'm not going to do this because your pregnancy is not a result of rape or incest or any of these things.
And it's not going to kill you.
Yeah.
Because most of the time, in fact, in the United States, which has one of the higher rates of maternal death, which includes, by the way, not just death during pregnancy or childbirth, but during the first year after, and not always from reasons that are caused by the pregnancy. And it's 70 out of 300,000. So it's that rare. And it's a smaller percentage of that 70 out of 300,000 that actually occur because of complications from the pregnancy. And for for the debate over whether a doctor should be able to refuse when the mother's life is at stake due to complications from the pregnancy. There's a real simple way to handle this, right? Yeah, the doctor has the legal right to refuse, but he is not protected by that legal right from a wrongful death lawsuit. So if he refuses to do the surgery because it's his labor, he has the right to refuse to do that surgery. But he may have to fight a wrongful death lawsuit. And if he if it's found that his decision led to the death of a patient that was under his treatment, then he could be found liable, and he could take the hit in terms of malpractice. So physicians that are not willing to perform an emergency abortion, which really should be the only type that women should be seeking in the first place, maybe should not be on call in hospitals, right? Like maybe hospitals should stick with physicians that are willing to provide the full range of treatment as needed, and physicians that are more interested in only doing live birth obstetrics should stick with private practice with hospital privileges where they can deliver in hospital but can't be forced to do that. Real simple solution right there.
So many of these things should come down to the Hippocratic Oath. This is something that was figured out a long time ago. First, do no harm.
Yeah.
And it's the same when it comes to cosmetic surgery, or indeed gender affirming surgery. Like doctors should be able to have the right to refuse, to say, no, I'm not going to do this to you just because you want to look more beautiful, or just because you want to become the opposite gender to what you actually are. And to some degree, the same should go for abortion. Like if this surgery is more likely to harm you than if I didn't do this surgery, then by my Hippocratic Oath, I should not perform this surgery. And that's when it comes down to the governments that do but should not control these surgeons. I'm not blaming the women for this. I'm not blaming the children who want to become a different gender for this. I'm blaming. I'm not even blaming the doctors for this. I'm blaming the governments that tell these doctors that they absolutely must perform these surgeries or they'll lose their medical license. Like, doctors should be able to say, no, I'm not going to harm you, and I'm not going to harm your baby because of this thing we call the Hippocratic Oath. Like,
Yep.
if I'm not going to perform any surgery unless it saves a human life. And yes, there are some pregnancies that must be performed, because if they weren't performed, then the mother and the child would die. And yeah, there are some pregnancies in which if you attempted to birth the baby, then both the baby and the woman would die. That is a
like
situation.
tubal pregnancies. You can't carry to term in your fallopian tube. It doesn't. You will eventually rupture, and you will bleed internally, and you and the baby will both die. And you can't carry far enough into term for the baby to survive premature birth in that circumstance, right? Those are very rare.
Really rare. Yeah, exactly.
Extremely rare.
And surgeries in which children or indeed adults insist that they will become suicidal if they don't get their genitals cut and pulled inside out. I you know where I'm going with this. I mean,
yeah, or what do they call it when they take off part of a dog's tail? Docked.
Mm-hmm.
We need to stop docking boys. Okay, they're not dogs.
Yep.
And their genitals are not a tail, and their skin is not an unnecessary part of their body. It's the largest organ in the body, and the first line of defense against surface germs in your immune system. And it's actual bullshit to claim that he's safer from germs if you cut off part of that biggest organ in his immune system, the skin. That's bullshit. Everybody knows it. It's almost impossible to rationally argue in favor of cutting that. In fact, I would say it is impossible. There isn't really a single argument that isn't citing information that's been discredited or emotional in favor of that procedure. So it needs to be stopped as well. But that we're getting a little, in terms of all of that, we're getting a little sidetracked. And I'll go ahead and yank it back to the National Organization for Women. So the National Organization for Women, like I said, they're the ones. What's happening in the UK was pushed by the National Organization for Women in the United States and Planned Parenthood in the United States, federal funding from the United States. The National Organization for Women has been sucking at the teat of that humongous, putrid cash cow for a long time. And it's not, we've talked about other things in the past that they've used it for. Like they get quite a bit of money for feminists in general, feminist organizations and so on. And those organizations then help fund them for things like sexual assault response training and sexual assault prevention training, intimate partner violence response training, and intimate partner violence prevention training, all of which is based on Duluth model theories that rely on patriarchy conjecture that is, it's been long debunked. The patriarchy conjecture is also bullshit. But so they get quite a bit of cash flow going within the feminist movement, and then feminists donate quite a bit of money back to this organization, and then women of the organization, then of course they get paid to be involved with this organization. And it's just a big circle jerk of exploiting public funding and donors who rely on the public funding that one exploits. So when Trump got elected and started making policies that affected that funding, National Organization for Women had a panic attack. There goes our cash cow. He's trimming the fat. He might actually butcher the cow. What are we going to do? And they published this, I don't know what they call this. This is basically just some sort of manifesto. Like, it's not anything. They do this all the time. They have a lot of pages in the now. You can see how long this is, by the way. They are really, really mad. If they were bees, they would be swarming. But it says, Trump administration is harming women with almost 100 policy mandates. They might update this because, I mean, we're only like halfway through the first year. Threatens healthcare, economic security, and fails to protect women from violence. I don't know if I can read the whole thing in that voice. I might go to the panicky woman voice. Oh my God! Washington. Since Inauguration Day, women have been hurt by the Trump administration.
Oh my God.
Yeah, this is too wide.
Yeah, you know why they're hurt? Because their fucking panties are in a goddamn twist. They're just so mad that they didn't get their woman president. And that's really it, because nothing has changed. I mean, for regular people, nothing about their lives have changed. You know what I mean? It's just so ridiculous. It's hyperbolic, and it's just hysteria.
Well, I can see why they're having a tantrum about some of this stuff, because they really are seeing initiatives change that are costing the organizations that donate money to them.
Mm-hmm.
So they're really mourning the loss of their cash cow here. They're really upset about this, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the cash cow was deserved or that they're right.
Right.
They wanted to get the statewide right, the federal-wide right, to kill their children up to and including birth. I say up to and including as in the moment before birth, but you wouldn't put it past them if they wanted it to the moment after birth. Because
there have been feminists talking about post-birth quote unquote post-birth abortions.
And they frame it as they want to be in control of their own bodies. But at what point is it someone else's body? Like, how far back and how far forward you have to go before it's someone else's body? And the answer is there's no limit. All bodies belong to women. All children's bodies, all male bodies. Like, if we want to send you to war for some bullshit dispute that we don't understand, then you men have to die. And if we don't want this baby, then even if it's fucking 10 years old, then we still get to destroy that baby. Because otherwise we would be in charge of that baby, and we shouldn't have to be in charge of that baby. This is my body. And so is that 10-year-old's body. That 10-year-old's body belongs to me. And my 30-year-old husband belongs to me. All bodies belong to women. That's what it comes down to.
So girl math here, all right? Girl math is, if it came out of your body, it's part of your body. Unless it's, your period or poop or pee or any number of other things that come out of your body that are not part of your body, right? But if it come out of your body, it's part of your body. And nobody else is involved, and it's your decision, and it's not part of anybody else's body. Nobody else has any connection to it whatsoever. But if you decide to give live birth and then retain custody when you don't have to, suddenly, then, well, it's not actually just part of your body. The father's DNA is involved too, so therefore he owes you money. Girl math, right? And it's really a pathetic set of excuses, and I'm gonna go off about this because it's women self-sabotaging, sabotaging their families, their communities, the greater nation around them, the lives of the men in their lives, and so on. When they do this, were you not in control of your body when you decided whether or not to engage in abstinence? And you, I'm not going to abstain. I'm going to fuck that guy, right? Okay. Were you not in control of your body when you made that decision? Were you not in control of your body when you decided who? Well, like this guy over here, he wants to be really dedicated. He wants to be a dad. He wants to come into my life and marry me and support me and raise a family with me. I'm going to fuck that guy over there who's standing on a street corner, has no job, wears his pants at half-mast, has a rap sheet that's longer than my arm, and 27 tattoos on his face, right? Were you not in control of your body when you made that decision? Were you not in control of your body when you decided whether or not to use birth control? When you decided how many types to use? When you decided whether or not your consent to him relied on him using a condom? Were you not in control of your body during those times? You're only in control of your body if somebody lets you kill your baby? That's the only time you're in control of your body? If that's what you think, you're a moron. And you shouldn't be running around without a chaperone.
And I'm not in control of his body or my body or my child's body, but all of these bodies belong to me. That's the logic they're trying to give to us. I don't have any responsibility for any of these bodies, but I have ownership of all of these bodies.
All of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's essentially, like, this is why I'm so disgusted, with the whole abortion movement, with the whole child support argument. Every last bit of it relies on ignoring the fact that a woman's control over her body doesn't start after a child is conceived. Right? She's been in control of her body the whole time. And it's just pathetic that women argue as if that's not the case. Like, who kidnapped your body? Who took control of your brain and went off and screwed some guy that wasn't going to marry you and raise a child with you? Who decided not to use any of the multitude of forms of birth control that we have available to us? We have barrier methods, we have chemical methods, like we have IUDs, we have implants, we have all kinds of different types, subtypes of those, plus demanding that he use his one type of birth control available to him till next year when Plan A comes out, and then the child support game might just be over, depending on how many men decide to buy into it. But you don't feel like you had any control during all that time? That's failure right there. And if you can't recognize that, then you can't succeed in your life. You can't, you will trip over your own 2 damn feet every single day, and then you're going to pretend somebody pushed you down and cry instead of getting back up every single day for the rest of your life. If you cannot acknowledge who is in control of your body when you are making your decisions about sex and reproduction. And if you're making the magic vagina argument, whereupon a woman's magic vagina bestows personhood on a living human organism, that's just as pathetic. It indicates that you haven't actually engaged in any thought process. You're just picking an arbitrary point in time that provides you with an excuse. If your whole life is about making excuses, you will spend your whole life wondering why men have it so much easier than you do. They don't. They face accountability every day, and they improve their decision-making process as a result. And so it looks easier because they are not making the same mistakes that you are making. They can't afford to. Real simple. But yeah, so the one thing that people have complained about, even Trump supporters who are MRAs have complained about with regard to Trump, is he has played into society's gynocentrism. And I will say this, you can't get elected without doing that. And it is ingrained in most conservatives that men protect women. So this is something that we knew about. And it's still, when you look at the available candidates that we had to choose from if we were voting in the United States, this was the least of all evils. Every single candidate was gynocentric. Trump at least is able to point out that women can lie and women can be gold diggers. Women got really mad when he did that too. They are still ranting and raving about the grab him by the pussy. They let you do it. Oh, a rapist. Because she consented? Because she wanted his money? Like that's yeah. So Trump can at least acknowledge that women can have bad character. But he's still gynocentric. And he did say, I am going to protect the women of our country. This is what since Inauguration Day, women have been hurt by the Trump administration. Much of the progress that women have made in the past 100 years has now been dismantled.
Where?
Even the poorest and most working class of women, in confidence, will tell you, yeah, you can just grab them by the dick.
Yeah.
And you won't get arrested for the sexual assault that you've obviously committed. You can just grab them by the dick, and they'll let you. I mean, a lot of them won't. A lot of them, the ones you call incels, will be like, please don't grab me by the dick, but you can do it anyway. Because even if they go to the police, they'll be like,
Nothing's gonna happen.
What you want
Yeah.
about me? Nice.
Yeah.
Even if you're 13 years old, they'll be like, nice. Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of guys, if you look at funny pickup lines in movies and stuff, and one of my friends had a guy use the I don't remember what movie it came from, but the line was nice shoes, wanna fuck? You say that to a woman, it's to make her laugh and everything, right? And then you maybe she sits with you for a while and chit chats and all that, or maybe she gets mad and throws a drink in your face, and you figure out that chick's not worth your time. But a dude, a lot of times, a dude is ready to roll in that moment. And I mean, I've known gals that have, like every time they went to a party when we were growing up, their goal was to get some guy alone and fuck him. And honestly, it's damn near impossible to not find somebody willing if you're female. You don't even have to be pretty. You don't even have to have good hygiene, actually. You don't even have to have good hygiene. You can be unattractive and have bad hygiene and go to like a club or a party or any place where there's a lot of guys. You will find one if you are looking to get laid. You will find one who is willing. Guaranteed. You have to have an extraordinary level of unattractiveness or personality flaws that make you unattractive, or hygiene issues. You have to have something about you that gives them the heebie-jeebies, something like that, right? And yeah, Gin Bottle says VD Benzio. That's about right. And NobaFan21 gave us $1 on Rumble and said, Hannah, what you describe is how average women behave throughout history, and it's only now that we understand female nature. And it is something that women have done for hundreds of years. But if women acted like that during the Neolithic era, our species would have died off. Back then, things were too dangerous for women to not have agency. When men made civilization safer and safer over time, women were able to become complacent and eventually content like cows and lazy about maintaining their understanding and conscious exercise of their personal agency, which is what accountability is. Responsible, conscious exercise of your personal agency. And women lost that. Women let that go. And today, women are willful about it. They will work harder to not put effort into making their lives better than they would putting effort into making their lives better. They will actually work harder at self-sabotage than they would work if they engaged in self-improvement. It's really sad, right? But yeah, women need to get back to their roots in those terms. But the progress of the last 100 years that they're talking about, let's see what they have to say here. During the 2024 campaign, President Trump said, "I am going to protect the women of our country." The exact opposite has happened, and women are less protected. And they're serious when they say this. They're actually serious. Each month, the National Organization for Women now will update reporters on what the Trump administration has done to directly harm women. So I don't think they understand the word directly.
No.
We'll just start there, because I haven't actually seen Trump in person ever. So, and I'm a woman. And they're what they're talking about affects women as a group, not women, a woman specifically. So I'm sitting here thinking, how is it affecting anybody directly?
Well, see, I have seen Trump in person. I stood less than 3 feet away from the man, and I survived.
Did he punch you?
Did he grab you by anything?
In the vagina, directly in my vagina.
Did you have your cat with you? Oh my god. So yeah, they don't understand. It's like literally, this is an incorrect usage. I have a complaint. But directly harm women.
For all the stuff we said about how Trump will change things, we didn't mean he'd change everything. Like, none of us were under the impression that he would become a men's rights advocate. Like we know that's not going to change for the next 5 or 6 presidencies, at least for the next 50 years or so. Just like we were never under the impression that you would ever get a president who doesn't suck Israel's dick. I know there's a bunch of people telling me, "Oh, look what's happening now, mate! Trump's just like Bush." Yeah, I figured he would change some things. I didn't think you'd ever get a president who doesn't suck Israel's dick. Like, I mean, Kamala would have, whatever, and it would have been even worse. But you'd never had an option of a president who wouldn't suck Israel's dick, or a president who wouldn't suck women's dicks. However you slice that. We're getting there by by one small step at a time. Like, it's going to be a long time before you get any president who gives the slightest shit about men's rights or about leaving the Middle East to itself. That's not going to happen probably in our lifetimes. We'll all be dead before you finally get a president who will leave the Middle East to itself, or who will not prioritize women's rights over men's rights. Like, I'm sorry if I didn't make that clear, but nowhere in the West in our lifetimes are we going to see an MRA president or an MRA prime minister anywhere in the West. So, sorry if I didn't make that clear.
There's a lot of us that just wouldn't take the job. Like, well, and I mean, me personally, I'm not a leader, and I'm not an executive type anyway. But I think most of us are in that section of humanity where we can see what's going on, we can see the pathways that would work to solutions, but our best way of doing that is to get more people to be aware of this, influence public opinion, and then start influencing the way that legislators work. And really, especially for, like, as being female, that's pretty much in my nature. Prior to women getting voting rights, that was the way women influenced politics. You look at maybe a bigger picture than just how is this affecting my family directly, and you look at different aspects of what might have caused it than maybe how men look at it, and you draw these things to their attention, and you get people to recognize what's going on and how things may be working differently than they thought. And then legislative change is affected by women not lobbying necessarily, but applying pressure campaigns. And so the National Organization for Women growing out of that is not abnormal, unusual, unnatural, or anything like that. It's just women going down the wrong path in terms of they're more narrow-minded than they don't look at the way that men are affected. They don't look at, in fact, they deliberately chose not to look at the way that men are affected. And it had profound detrimental effects on the Black population when they made that choice. But it is pretty typical historically for that to be the way women get things done, is to not necessarily be heavy into politics, but instead to be heavy into advocacy and pressure campaigns. NovaFin21 gives us $1 and says, except the experts taught me that grape is how humans reproduced all the time, so that's an easy explanation for how we survived. Remind me what female romance is, if not grape from demonic monsters. So I don't remember what we were talking about when that got posted, but I will say this. There may be experts that say historically rape was the norm, but they are defining it differently than against the will of the female. Because if that was the case and men were significantly stronger than women, it would more likely have resulted in a die-off instead of a success. Right? Pair bonding and reproduction by rape don't go together very well. But going on, each month the national organization, we read that part, directly harm women, specifically focus on economic security, safety, and healthcare. Much of the administration's policy harms women, however, now has chosen to highlight the most egregious and impactful positions or policies below. Sorry, that was a good dyslexic moment. As the Trump administration's policies harming women as of May 5, 2025, in reverse chronological order. Executive orders are bolded. Specific policy changes are not bolded. So apparently they can't decide whether or not Trump is bold. And the first thing, right? The first thing they post, this has absolutely no effect in my life whatsoever because I was never going to get involved in this in the first place. So directly harming women as a population by doing this is, no, that's bullshit. First thing, and I'm going to increase the size of this now that we are out of the fat part of the PDF file. They really didn't design this very well. Canceled defense programs encouraging women to participate in national security issues created under the 2017, which would have been a Trump policy, by the way, Women, Peace, and Security Act, signed by President Trump. He canceled his own policy. How dare he? He changed his mind. Only women are allowed to do that. So what is this policy? Let me see. I'm not going to play the YouTube video of Trump saying he's going to protect women. But I opened their link to the New York Times. I have had to use an archive site to get past paywall here. Hegseth cuts program encouraging women to take roles in national security. The defense secretary said Women, Peace, and Security program distracted from the core task of war fighting and that the Pentagon would no longer participate in it. And let's see. To increase the role of women in preventing and resolving conflicts all over the world. So the Women, Peace, and Security Act was signed into law in 2017. Mr. Hegseth said in a post on social media platform X...
I just have to say, if you want to prevent and resolve conflicts, just tell us what's wrong.
Yeah. Getting women involved in preventing and solving conflicts is counterintuitive, if you ask me.
Just instead of going, you should know what's wrong, just tell us what's wrong. You know? And if you
Women
can't,
create
then
world
maybe you
peace by
shouldn't.
not speaking to each other.
If you can't do that, maybe don't get involved in politics. I don't know, maybe.
This just in, women create world peace by crossing their arms and turning their backs on each other and looking off into the distance as if they are not in the middle of a fight.
Not about the nail.
No, it's not about the nail. So on X, he said, yet another woke, divisive social justice Biden initiative. So he mischaracterized it as a Biden initiative. It might have been something Biden started and Trump was like, okay, we'll do this. That overburdens our commanders and troops, distracting them from our core task, war fighting. Yeah. As a defense secretary, Mr. Hegseth does not have the authority to rewrite or overturn laws. But he said that from here on in, the Pentagon would carry out the minimum requirements of the program and work to end it. So in other words, it didn't get canceled. Trump didn't cancel it, and they're just not going overboard enforcing it. So it's actually not. They just lied. The U.S. military services have tried to carry out the program's goals in different ways. The Air Force, for instance, has asked commanders to recognize that men, women, boys, girls, and various groups, including lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender people, purple people eaters, you're chewing gum on the bedpost overnight.
These are all covered in men, women, boys,
Muppets.
girls, and various groups, right?
Yes, your neighbor's pet ferret. Are all affected by a conflict in different ways. The Air Force set up working groups to consider how different populations are affected by military policies. How nice.
I mean, when you're war against Iran, these various disparate groups don't even matter. Right?
And apparently,
I know there are transsexuals in Iran, but they're only forced into transsexuality because it's the easiest way not to get executed on account of being gay.
Yeah.
In Iran, or indeed any of these Islamic nations. You're splitting hairs in the most ridiculous of ways, is all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Interestingly, most of the nations of the world do not split these hairs, except in exceptional circumstances. So I'm not quite sure why you would laser focus your morality on these exceptional circumstances.
Interestingly, the rest of this article is not about the subject. They just went off on a rant about Hegseth. They didn't like him. That's literally. I'm not kidding. But he did something else that we characterize as worse than it is because bad Hegseth. But in any case, it seems like this policy, the outcome of this policy was talk therapy in the military, which really didn't. He's right. This distracts from the mission of the military. The military is not there to coddle people. And are they going to decide differently if they're going to bomb a particular area? Like somebody comes along and says, "You can't bomb Tehran. There's a lesbian." That's not going to make a difference. I assure you, they will still drop all the bombs they want. Back to there we go. So, all women everywhere are apparently affected by this, by the way. He reasserted discriminatory efforts to block transgender military members from serving their country by escalating the issue to the Supreme Court via an emergency application, April 24th, 2025. So this one's interesting. the debate over trans women in the military, that is something that the commander-in-chief makes that policy. The commander-in-chief makes those decisions. And the lawsuits involved are essentially asking the court system to override the commander-in-chief in how he makes his decisions regarding how the military works. And so,
like, it's literally his job.
right. If the commander-in-chief does not like the outcome in a lower court, he has as much legal right as Jane Roe to take his case to the next higher court.
Mm-hmm.
And because this issue is a more immediate and compelling issue to the military than an issue where a woman is fighting to impose a uniform standard on all 50 states, rather than deal with the fact that different states have different standards with regard to a procedure that may or may not be considered healthcare by everybody. He has the right to get this expedited.
Asthmatic rights now. Myopic rights now. I say this as someone who is very mildly asthmatic and sort of moderately myopic. I require glasses in order to see, and I get a bit wheezy in the event that I don't have an inhaler on hand. Can we compare this to someone who needs a constant injection of hormones in order to maintain the genitals that they need to keep inverted for the rest of their lives, and the hormones they need to keep injecting for the rest of their lives and stuff? Like, I'm kind of okay with not being able to join the army on account of being short-sighted and a little bit wheezy. Like, I'm sort of okay with that, and I've been okay with that for the duration of my life. I'm like, if I do join the army and they say you can't join the army because you're a little bit asthmatic and a little bit myopic, I'll be like, yeah, all right, fine. But these people are so mentally deranged that they feel the need to butterfly their genitals into a, I don't even want to describe it, but like, you have this, if you have the slightest medical issue, you won't be allowed to join the army. The slightest medical issue, and you won't be able to join the army.
They do take
But you're
people with
talking about people with massive medical.
They do take people with slight medical issues, but they do take people with. They change their standards on what medical issues you can have when joining the military in wartime, when they want more people in the military. The thing that people need to understand is, if I remember right, this policy didn't affect people who were done transitioning and just needed maintenance post-transition. This policy only affected people who joined the military and then wanted military insurance to pay for their transition. Yeah, and to be going through all these surgeries and therefore undeployable during that time. It's a different situation than being done with the disabling part of the surgical procedure. So that's the first thing I will point out. The other thing is, of course, they're half their sources on this have been like, as I went through and looked at stuff, there were a bunch of things. Their source was the New York Times. They don't like other publications very much, apparently. So this was another one. Lower courts had blocked the policy, saying it wasn't supported by evidence and violated equal protection principles. But the policy, they don't describe it in this either. It's not a ban on troops. It is a requirement that you be done with the transitioning part of your medical treatment and be post-op. So there's that. Then they're mad that he issued the order saying that expressing what it called a false gender identity conflicts with a soldier's commitment to an honorable, truthful, and disciplined lifestyle, even in one's personal life, and that requiring others to recognize a falsehood is not consistent with the humility and selflessness required of a service member. So, in February, the Defense Department implemented this order requiring transgender troops to be forced out of the military, according to this article. And it affected about 4,200 current service members, or about 0.2% of the military. That's actually not very many people when it really boils down to it. And they made this a female issue, despite the fact that the term transgender can refer to trans women or trans men. So basically their objection is that he expedited this. They're mad because I think they expect the Supreme Court to overturn the lower court. And that indicates that they are aware that his order is not unconstitutional and not going to be considered discriminatory. So essentially, they're mad that the president is doing what he has a legal right to do. Reduced equitable access to higher education. So I look at this one. This is executive order. So I looked up the. Let's get rid of this. Reforming accreditation to strengthen higher education executive order. Right. And the part that they object to here, they really didn't. Yeah, banned higher education accreditors who consider DEI in their accreditation standards, which is how schools qualify to give students financial aid and Pell Grants. So to explain that, let's say Ohio State University wants to be able to give people a diploma that makes them eligible to get hired in hospitals as nurses. So you want to have their school of nursing be accredited, so you actually get a real nursing certificate. You can get hired as a nurse. If you go to another school and you want to become a nurse practitioner, you can go from your LPN to RN to the next levels of study and so on till you get that. And you don't have to go to the same school to get that certification because it's accredited by the same groups that accredit other schools. So you could transfer to Michigan University, or actually that would probably cause you to immediately burst into flame and die if you went to Michigan University State from OSU. But you know what I mean. You could go to any other state university. You could go to private universities as long as they had the same accreditation. And so when these organizations impose a standard, an arbitrary standard like DEI, it forces the universities then to impose that standard. And so if these accreditors are saying, well, we will only give you accreditation if you are actively discriminating against white people in your admissions so that others will have more seats at your university, or if you're actively discriminating against men in your admissions so that women will have more seats, then universities, if they want to make money, they have to prove to students that when you leave this university, you're going to get a job. When you leave this university, your degree is going to make you hireable. That's the whole goal of going. It's not about making a home here. Then the university has to have those policies. And so getting rid of these basically means the universities now have a choice. They don't have to do this. And that's got now pissed off. The policy says that, let's see, let me get past all of the reasoning because we already... the American Bar Association's Council of the Section of Legal Education and Admissions to the Bar, which is the sole federally recognized accreditor for Juris Doctor programs, has required law schools to demonstrate by concrete action a commitment to diversity and inclusion by committing to having a student body and facility that is diverse with respect to gender, race, and ethnicity. As the Attorney General has concluded and informed the Council, the discriminatory requirement blatantly violates the Supreme Court's decision in Students for Fair Admissions Incorporated versus President and Fellows of Harvard College. And though the council subsequently suspended its enforcement while it considers proposed revisions, this standard and similar unlawful mandates must be permanently eradicated. So the policy then is they have to stop doing this. And the Section 2 provides a penalty. The Secretary of Education is going to hold them accountable by denying them accreditation recognition, monitoring or suspending them, terminating them if they fail to meet the applicable recognition criteria or otherwise violate federal law. The federal law says they can't impose DEI requirements on universities anymore. That's what now is mad about here. Now, again, this goes back to if universities can't discriminate against men in the admissions process, then women will not hold more seats than men in universities. They won't admit more women than men. They won't then have the advantage. So if you have more men maybe qualifying or being able to fund their university experience, then you end up in a situation where courses of study like gender studies or interdisciplinary studies are less likely to have sufficient students to maintain the department. And if the university can't get enough applicants to take those courses, they eliminate the course. Right? They all right, we're not gonna have this course because we don't have enough people to fill the classroom. If we're paying the professor this much, we need to make this much from the students. If we're spending this much using the classroom, we need to have this many students. Yeah, they want you to have a full classroom. If you don't have a full classroom, your job is in danger as a professor. I was an adjunct for 3 years at Wright State University at their Lake campus in Salina. I was teaching photography, and this was the case. This is one of the things that we discussed in the department was, you want to get students interested in and show them how your class will advance their potential career. I just taught what we called IT photography, which is basically I taught students how to use photography in a business setting to enhance their jobs in various ways. Like if their company was trying to sell something, or if their company had a newsletter, if their company wanted portraits of their higher ups on the walls, things like that. If their company had events they wanted covered, that they could have someone within the company do the photography. So then when you apply for a job at various companies, you can put down on your resume that you're capable of doing those things. So it wasn't just taking pictures. It was actually a desktop publishing course that focused on photography, but demonstrated quite a bit more than that. And it actually, the students were very enthusiastic about it. And yeah, Richard Bier points out one way they do this is making the course mandatory. And the interdisciplinary studies department has done that by making interdisciplinary studies integral to business, medicine, law. Like there's a whole bunch of areas of study that don't really have anything to do with feminism that has now had feminist creep, because basically they can't get enough people to sit in a classroom and hear about the history of my female victimhood, but they can get feminism into your psychology courses, your sociology courses, your courses on how to become a human resources drone in your company, or even how to become a CEO in your company. Like all of that ends up being infected with feminism. And so when you graduate with a business degree, you've had feminist nonsense shoved down your throat that the department then can say, well, we need to exist because all these other departments rely on us for aspects of their educational programs. So that's
you all hate women, and this is why you all hate women. And this is why you all need to be taught not to hate women. And if you don't, then you hate women.
Yep.
Again, this is one.
And also,
go on.
Also, believe women if they make allegations in your company, and don't question what they have to say. And how dare you?
I hate women because women like this exist.
There we go. Yeah, I get jaded about women sometimes. Especially when I argue with women about reproductive rights or valuing men.
I'm determined not to hate women, despite how much I've been taught to love women. I feel like I need to go in the opposite direction. But
yeah.
I have found a line of work in which I've discovered the few women in the world who don't deserve hatred.
Yay.
And you can do the same, folks. If you look deep enough into the abysses of society, you too can find women who don't deserve to be hated. They are out there. They're out there somewhere. But I won't tell you to simp for the women in your life, because those women probably are not part of that abyss.
No simping. Just acknowledge. That's all. I hate simping.
No, when you simp for women, they become the women that deserve
that you hate. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I can't imagine my husband simping for me. It would ruin everything. But he is very sweet about acknowledging what I do. And there's a difference, right? He doesn't make it bigger than it is. He doesn't make it different than it is. And he doesn't pretend that I have no flaws and never need to be argued with or told I'm going the wrong direction and rerouted, right? Because that's the issue with simps, honestly. Human beings have flaws and make mistakes. If you simp for someone, you are denying their humanity. And even though you're denying it in a positive direction, in that you're treating them as though they're something above human instead of human, it's still detrimental to the welfare of the individual and the relationship and yourself. By the way, Pepito gave us $25 and said, "Good show today." Oh no, that was yesterday. Yesterday at 4:20 p.m. So this was for whatever show they had yesterday, but I don't know if it got read off. So I'm reading it off. I just noticed it. It's been there since 4:20 p.m. yesterday, but I just noticed it. That's pretty bad. So they're mad that Trump terminated hundreds of National Science Foundation grants for research related to underrepresented populations and future funding opportunities for projects focused on drawing more women, minorities, and people with disabilities into science.
God, these people are so tiresome.
He tried to terminate these things, but some judge somewhere in the country ruled against it. So he wasn't able to pull it off. But he declared war on Iran. And I'm waiting for a judge to say, no, you can't do that. Oh, weird. No judge anywhere is doing that. That's so weird.
I will say this he actually did get through. And so the National Science Foundation it's like a grant dispenser in a way. It funds all kinds of research, like shitloads of research. And so it's not I wouldn't call it necessarily like a warehouse, but it does definitely have a wide spectrum, a broad spectrum, I guess, of things that it funds, right? So we look at what the changes that took place were. I don't know what the old policy was, but the thing that stood out to me when I read this earlier, let's see. It's this paragraph, I think. These two paragraphs. So NSF's broadening participation activities, including activities undertaken in fulfillment of the broader impacts of criterion and research on broadening participation, must aim to create opportunities for all Americans everywhere. So what they're saying is their efforts at increasing people's interest in the pursuit of scientific research and in the pursuit of scientific advancement, that has to equally encourage everyone to get involved, every American to get involved. And actually, I should start back here. The principles of merit. This is where feminists hate. One of the things feminists really hate. Principles of merit, competition, equal opportunity, and excellence are the bedrock of the NSF Foundation. NSF continues to review all projects using intellectual merit and broader impacts criteria. Right? And then it says the thing that I just read off before that. These efforts should not preference some groups at the expense of others, or directly or indirectly exclude individuals or groups. Research projects with more narrow impact, limited to subgroups of people based on protected class or characteristics, do not effectuate NSF priorities. So it doesn't make NSF priorities come to fruition. To basically discriminate against one group on behalf of another is the antithesis of what this foundation exists to achieve. It will continue to support research with the goal of understanding or addressing participation in STEM in accordance with all applicable statutes and mandates, with the core goal of creating opportunities for all Americans. So what Now is mad about is literally that this group will not exclude men and boys and white people on the basis of their demographics in their efforts at increasing the number of people who take an interest in STEM. That's it. Imagine being mad that some people are not excluded. Right? That's insane. There are a lot of other things I can think of to get mad about. All kinds of, and let's see if I somewhere here I remember seeing, and I thought I had it open, but I guess I don't. A list of open funding opportunities. Nope. That's not what it was. There was a link on who's let's see who's what got cut, basically. And it went to a file, and I had actually opened that on another. It was on another computer, obviously, because it's not on this one. But I started reading the list. I wonder if I have that in my history, if I can actually find that. But what I discovered from that, really kind of strange. All of the things that have been discontinued are like these really weird, how do we get more gay, black, transgender little people involved in this one particular subset of research within the overall umbrella of social sciences. And then they had, $100,000 dedicated to this one. How do we do this? How do we get this tiny little group of people? No pun intended, no insult intended to anybody, but very, very minor minority of the population there, right? Really specific subset involved in this really specific subset of this really weirdly unnecessary end of research. And it ends up being the kind of thing where you look at this and you realize that they're essentially money laundering, right? So people do these studies, these surveys, or various subtypes of research on things that nobody is ever going to be able to use, and they get paid. And a lot of times it ends up being, you have this one individual that helped a politician, and now they're getting this grant to do this research that never is going to matter for anybody. Or you have this one individual that's being a thorn in everybody's side, and you can shut them up if you give them this research grant and shuffle them off to Buffalo to interview people all over the country on whether they consider it discriminatory that erasers are pink and not blue, or some shit like that. Please do not anybody fund that research. So there we go. Terminated hundreds of grants. I wonder if that link is the one that I had opened. Might have been. Nope. Oh well. If I run into it, we might start going through that list on another night. So what else have we got here? Endangered Americans' ability to afford and access crucial medications by moving toward imposing tariffs. This sounds like that question that God, I can't think of dipshit's name, asked me in court at Calgary, where he had like a whole bunch of modifiers in the middle of this sentence. Maybe possibly ever said anything remotely related to a rape joke. Anything anybody has ever said about any subject that is connected to sex qualifies.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That question was so stupid. All he had to do is ask me if I've ever told a rape joke, And my answer would have been really simple. But yeah. So imposing by moving toward imposing tariffs. In other words, he's thinking about it. How dare he? He's thinking about it. Oh my God. On foreign-made drugs, including contraceptives, April 15th, 2025. And eventually he did actually create a policy on that. And it had some results. So the White House actually published a fact sheet on this. Right? The order directs the Department of Health and Human Services to take steps to significantly reduce drug prices for American patients. Delivers lower drug prices for Medicare, which your tax dollars pay for, right? And the seniors who rely on it by improving Medicare drug pricing negotiation program. So, Medicare basically makes pharmacies and their deal with pharmacies I don't know how to explain this. Imagine if you were able to go to the grocery store, all right, and you look at the eggs in the dairy department, and you see that they have them by the dozen, and they have them by the half dozen, and maybe they have them by like the 18 egg carton. And you know what? I would like to pay for my eggs by the truckload, and then you just distribute them to the customers that come in with my card that says I paid for those eggs, but I want a discount because I'm paying for them by the truckload, right? Which is basically what your insurance company does too. If you have like Blue Cross Blue Shield or some other type of insurance, your insurance company does the same thing. And it's why if you take your insurance card in and you pay for a drug with your insurance card, the price that the pharmacy is getting is lower than if you take your dollars in or your credit card in and you pay for that drug. One difference with Medicaid, not Medicare, but Medicaid, is if you go in with Medicaid and you pay with your Medicaid card, and Medicaid basically says, here's the deal. If you're going to accept Medicaid, we're going to buy the eggs by the truckload, and we're going to pay exactly this much for them. And you cannot charge the customers over that amount. And you can't negotiate. We're just setting this. This is the way it is. Whereas Medicare has made deals with pharmacies on how much. And there are different types of Medicaid programs that you can sign up for as an old person. So you might get prescription drug coverage or you might not. But Medicare has also negotiated what you pay and so on. And you might have another type of insurance too that covers your drugs as well. So it's a little more complicated. But what this policy did was standardize these payments so that the pharmacy has an idea what they're going to make by serving Medicare patients. The people who are on Medicare can plan because they have an idea of what they're going to be spending, and the drugs are less expensive. For instance, the brags that they have put up here, they lowered, let's see, aligning Medicare payment for certain prescription drugs with the cost by which hospitals actually acquire them, which means their hospitals are not overinflating, they're not gouging when they sell these drugs. Makes it 35% lower than what the government currently pays. Standardizing Medicare payments can lower prices by as much as 60%. Insulin prices for now. This is an iffy one too. Right? Insulin prices for low-income patients and the uninsured will be lowered as low as 3 cents plus a small administrative fee. Injectable epinephrine for low-income patients and the uninsured will be lowered to as low as $15 plus a small administrative fee. And for people who don't know, when Trump ran for president in 2015, if you needed to carry an EpiPen and you were low income and your insurance didn't cover it, it was $600.
Jesus.
Right? Now, the reason people need to carry EpiPens is because they have an allergy to something that causes an anaphylactic reaction that can kill you in 5 minutes. So if you're not within 5 minutes of a hospital, you're fucked. Right? You remember that scene in shit, I can't think of the movie. It's the one where the kid bedazzles the football. It has The Rock, and she has a nut allergy or something. This kid who is his daughter, that the mother has just left the child with him, and she has an allergic reaction at a restaurant. And rather than call 911, he just picks her up and runs to the hospital because you don't have time to wait for an ambulance to get to you in that circumstance. I almost died from an anaphylactic response when I was 4 years old. And I have the dumbest memory from it too. But I had ingested an allergen, and fortunately, by that time, my community had a hospital. Unfortunately, the doctor thought I was having a tantrum and didn't do anything right away.
Oh my God.
So I got to the point where my body was changing color. My skin was changing color due to oxygen deprivation. And you could see the swelling. And I could feel my throat closing. Like, I could feel the inside of my throat touching the inside of my throat, and I wasn't trying to swallow.
Oh my God.
And I remember that. And I remember, because I was a little kid, the doctor saying something along the lines of, if this doesn't work, I'm going to have to do a trick. Except I heard him say, I'm going to have to do a trick. And so I was like, well, at least I'm going to get to see him do a trick, right? If I don't pass out. And the next thing, he stabbed me in the chest.
Oh.
And so I was really mad. So he said he was going to do a trick, and then he stabbed me. That shit works really fast, by the way, and it's not anything like in the movies where like you sit up and you're all energetic. And no, man, I laid there on the table and just shook. But it did reverse the reaction. But that was a scare, and it hurt so bad. Like it burned like fire, and then my whole chest just hurt. And all I could do was lay there and breathe. But I could breathe, so that was a good thing. Right?
Yeah.
But if you're in that situation, you do not have time to wait for somebody to come and help you, especially if you've had the reaction already at an earlier point. You know, each time your body has that freak out, it's worse than the last time. And so people carry an EpiPen because something in their environment is so dangerous to them that they have to be able to either self-administer or trust somebody right there next to them to administer that drug immediately upon the start of the reaction so they don't die. And for it to cost $600 if you don't have insurance, usually people who don't have insurance, they don't have $600. Right? That's at the time in my neighborhood, that was a month's rent.
And those are like a one-shot deal, right?
Right. Once you've used it, you got to get another one.
Jesus.
Right. But yeah, so to drop it to $15 is amazing. And they're mad about that.
Yeah.
National Organization for Women is mad about that.
Idiots. They're idiots.
The order helps the state reduce drug prices by facilitating importation programs that could save states millions in prescription drug costs. and building off programs that help states get much better deals on expensive sickle cell medications in Medicaid than statutorily required 23.1% discount. So there's another one, right? That affects only a percentage of the population. And it's genetic and it's racial. Now is mad that sickle cell medication might be less expensive. That's interesting. So again, you look at this. What he's basically done. Drug companies in the United States had a higher price that they were charging us as Americans for drugs that they were selling us than they were selling overseas, and then companies that sold drugs overseas were flooding the market here with cheap generics, which they were still charging us more for than the people in their own countries. So Americans were getting screwed twice, and Trump pretty much put the kibosh to that by changing policy to require drug companies to give Americans, if they want to sell in America, they got to give Americans similar prices to what they're giving people in foreign countries, as opposed to upping their prices just because they're selling to us. So, yeah. At what point is this gendered, though? I have to ask this. Like, does now think that men don't use medications?
These people, they're not too bright, are they?
I gotta wonder about that, because like so far the things they've complained about, the way that they affect the sexes, they actually mostly affect both sexes. The ones that did only affect women only affected a tiny subset, and they didn't necessarily affect them on the level, like they aren't kicking women out of programs involved in national security. They're not like going through and saying, well, you're in a skirt, you got to get out, we don't want you here anymore. What they're doing is they're not accommodating they're not accommodating a few things, but they're not accommodating like special treatment for women. Jen Bottle says, no, Hannah, and they think men don't feel pain as much either. Yeah, that's true. They do think men don't feel pain as much.
Mm-hmm.
That's really, and then they claim to think that women, well, they claim that women have a higher pain tolerance too. But then they say men don't go to the doctor. So which is, men don't complain and they don't go to the doctor, but women are more stoic about pain. Which is it?
I'm not a real doctor. I wouldn't know.
And we got another one here. Where is it? Yeah, John Doe says, I love not being allergic to anything normal, not even poison ivy. That's a weird one for you. All right. I'm allergic to everything normal. I'm allergic to grass. I'm surrounded by grass. I'm allergic to it. And I'm allergic to it twice. I have two different parts of the plant that I'm allergic to.
Oh my God.
When it's pollinating, I have one reaction. When the lawn mowing people come along and mow the lawn and I'm outside, I have a different reaction.
Jeez.
And that reaction also can be affected or can hit me when I walk barefoot in the grass.
Hannah
right?
should have been killed like 1,000 times. I'm pretty sure she's the Messiah.
Right?
I am not the Messiah. I'm not. My name is not
exactly
Brian.
What the Messiah would say.
I don't even have a joke for both. Come on. Or, well, I do have a shoe and a gourd. I have two gourds, but we're not talking about those. In any case, yeah, but I'm not allergic to poison ivy. I can lay in a bed of poison ivy, at least in my past experiences with it. I have actually done that by accident, by the way, and not had a single consequence. I didn't even get bit by bugs from laying in it. Nothing happened. Now, I wouldn't test that over and over again because you can develop a sensitivity even if you don't have it when you're young. But that always just shocked me because all sorts of things that are completely harmless to everybody else, my body panics when it comes into contact with them, right? But poison ivy, which most people get itchy blisters from, had no effect on me whatsoever.
That's so crazy.
Yeah. Nothing.
Wow.
I'm just a weirdo. That's what it is. Let's see. So, this is another one. Cut off funding from the Department of Education to Maine for allowing transgender athletes equal access to sports. Okay, that's a dishonest representation there. Now, I got to tell you where I stand on this issue, and it's kind of gonna look like a weird dance probably to a lot of people. So I was an athlete when I was in high school. I was never exceptional. I'm an asthmatic. I'm a nerd. I did well at hurdles. I was fourth place in my league my freshman year, and then that was my peak, and then I didn't do anything special after that. And I ran on the cross country team. Actually stumbled for most of the race forward, catching myself barely with the next leg, and sounding like I was trying to vacuum the course instead of running it. Right? I was never a really good runner, but I did it. I was never going to win anything, never going to amount to anything with that. It was more about battling like my own personal health conditions than it was about being great. And my teammates actually really supported me in that on an amazing level for me. But I experienced something that sort of influences my position on this, and that I ran with a state champion when I ran hurdles, and I ran on a second place state level team when I was in cross country. And I think one of our runners my freshman year actually finished first. But in any case, like we had great athletes, and I ran with great athletes, and it improved my performance running with those guys, like on a level that I don't think I could have done if I had just run with people of my level of performance and maybe a little higher, instead of these exceptional athletes whose performance I had no chance of ever touching. And so I look at this with the fact that men and boys are better at sports than women and girls in general. They outperform women and girls on everything, right? And it's because they are stronger, faster, have better endurance. Their bodies are built more efficiently for the types of actions that you take to do your performance of whatever sport you're doing. It's just a fact. It's biology. And so I know that trans women in women's sports is going to mean that a lot of gals are going to get pushed aside. There's two things that have led me to oppose simply banning them from women's sports. One of them is that thing I just talked about. The other one is, historically, when girls have been excluded from boys' teams, they sued. Right? There's a history in the last half of the 20th century of girls suing to get positions on wrestling teams, baseball teams, tennis teams, golf teams, football teams, where I don't know if you realize the difference in bone structure between boys and girls after they started puberty can lead to things like that. There was a girl at my school a few years before I was a student there who was on the football team in like they called it midget football in elementary school. And then in middle school, what would be middle school today, they had another name for it, if I remember right. Then when you got into junior high, you were on the official school football team, and she was fine. But her first year in high school, she broke her collarbone, and when she came back from that, she broke another bone, and it was just normal practice. And and she was bigger than other girls. She was bigger than me. I at my peak, I was 5'9". And I have the exomorph build, broad shoulders, not the coat hanger shoulders. And so, for her being bigger than me, that's pretty big for a girl. But she still couldn't. Her body wasn't made to handle the level of impact that it was going to take from being hit by a man's body or a boy's body that was becoming a man at the speeds that you do on a football field. And I'm familiar with that. I played sandlot football with the boys until I was about 10 years old, and they started getting a lot bigger than me, and it started to become a lot more painful, and it became obvious that it was not a good idea for me to continue that, right? So girls have sued for this for decades, and there have been boys who were heading for scholarships, right? Heading for being scouted for college teams and even semi-pro teams and potential Olympians that got their careers derailed, their sports careers derailed by girls who insisted on having a space in boys teams. And then at the same time, you had this history of female reporters suing for access to men's locker rooms, professional sports teams' men's locker rooms. So another women suing for access to men's spaces. If men had a male-only club or organization, women sued for access to that. Right? There's not a space that men have created that women have not invaded. Right? Even men's sheds. The men's shed movement in Australia, there is currently an effort for women to invade those maker spaces that are supposed to be therapeutic for men. Women want in on it for themselves, not to help with men's therapy, by the way. So I don't have a lot of sympathy when people complain that men are invading women's spaces now. I don't care whether they're complaining about trans women that they consider to be men because of biology, or actual non-trans men who identify as men barging in. Like, I don't care. Go back and give up all the things that you sued for, ladies, or shut the fuck up and deal with it.
Well,
you're just getting back what you gave.
Hannah, you appear to be insinuating that men are stronger than women. You are not allowed to say this. No one is allowed to say this. Men are not stronger than women. Women are stronger than men. So if it ever appears that a man who identifies as a woman is stronger than a woman, well, it's just because she is a woman who happens to be stronger than other women. It's not because men are stronger than women. It's because how do I say this? A biologically born man has the strength to admit that he was never a man, that he was always a woman. And that's what's important. It's important that men denounce their masculinity. and that they admit that they were always women, because everyone is a woman, because everyone was always a woman, and it doesn't matter how many women, how many biological women get beaten the fuck to death by women who were born as men, as long as every man in the world denounces his masculinity. That's all feminists are interested in. They're interested in removing all of the men from existence, and they can't do that literally. They can't do it biologically, but they can do it identitarily. They can get every man to denounce his masculinity on an identitarian basis. They can get every man to say, no, I am not a man. That's the only way they can get rid of the men. Because deep down they know they they really want to genocide men. They really want a human race that doesn't include any men. But they know they can't do that because they're going to need the men to do all of the difficult jobs. But they can get the men to denounce their masculinity. They can get the men to say, no, I am not a man. And it doesn't matter how many women they sacrifice on the altar of that ideology. It doesn't matter if every sport is dominated by men pretending to be women, as long as those men denounce their masculinity. And the same thing's going to happen in all of the jobs that men have to do, like being tree surgeons and the fucking crab fishers, and all of the jobs that men have to do that women
all
won't
the labor
do.
behind the grid, by the way, the utilities grid, water, power, gas, trash collection, all of that.
They know they can't actually genocide the men, but the next best thing they can do is get all the men to pretend they're not men, and that will do. That will do. And that's why all of this is happening. That's why it's okay for men to claim they're women, but it's not okay for white people to pretend they're black people, because that doesn't matter. Because the race baiting has always been just this pointless bullshit that's tacked on to the gender bullshit. They just want to erase men from history, and because they know they can't do that, they just have to get men to pretend to erase themselves from history.
Yep, they want to erase men from history. They want to erase men from modern times. They want to erase men from everything. And they want women to get credit for things that women didn't do. They want women to get credit for things that women are not doing, and so on. But and when it comes to sports and spaces and so on, the egregious level of entitlement that women have engaged in, and are now, demanding like recourse for, it really takes the cake, right? And I mentioned the lawsuits to get into men's and boys sports. There's another thing that they've done. So everyone's familiar, if you're in the United States, you've heard about Title IX. You've heard it over and over again. Title IX, Title IX, Title IX. Anti-discrimination, blah, 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 right? And the law originally was written in response to female agitation against universities' ability to have a quota system in certain areas, like law, medicine, and such, where they only reserved a certain small number of seats for women. And it was largely because not very many women went into those professions in the first place. And often when women would take those courses, they either didn't finish, or they didn't go into practice, or if they went into practice, they didn't stay in practice. So they didn't do the thing that universities need their former students to do in order for the university to maintain its prestige and attract future students. And that is make a name for themselves, have that nice diploma on the wall in their practice for people to see this doctor came from this university. Maybe I want to go to that university and become a doctor. This lawyer came from this university and won my case. Maybe if I want to be a lawyer, I want to go to that university, right? They didn't do that. And as many numbers as men, as high a percentage of students as men did. So universities didn't reserve as many seats for women. And during the 60s and 70s, that was changing, right? During the 50s, actually, and 60s, that was changing. By the time Title IX passed, the quota system was going out of fashion among universities already. So the law basically ordered them to stop doing the thing that they were stopping doing. And they stopped. And then the administration went, well, now what do we do with this department that we've created for enforcing Title IX? Well, now we have to make it about sports. Okay, it's about sports. You have to have equity in sports, right? You have to have as many girl sports and as many girls participating in sports at your school as you do guys. As many women as men. And if you don't, we're going to have a quota system. If you don't, then we're going to penalize you. And so what universities ended up doing, like they tried to get more women interested, but that didn't work. So they started eliminating like the lesser profitable events at their universities, especially if their university wasn't necessarily known for that event. So things like men's gymnastics teams got the axe. Men's Olympic wrestling teams got the axe because, of course, their football and basketball programs were profitable, but those other teams were not. And they didn't have an equivalent for the gals. Maybe they couldn't get a football team, flag football or powder puff football going for the gals. So they couldn't make parity without eliminating some sport that men played and only having a women's team. And that it basically eliminated a lot of young men's chances at becoming an Olympic athlete. And it also eliminated that part of many more men's athletic experience in school. They couldn't go for those teams because those teams didn't exist. So if they wanted any athletic participation, they had to do something else. Well, if that wasn't like your normal sport, you're starting over in a sport that isn't your normal sport. A lot of guys just didn't go out for anything. And Meredith G pointed out the Department of Education was created under Carter a good 5 years after Title IX, and many men's colleges going co-ed and quotas going away. So they didn't really have a purpose with regard to Title IX ever. Well, then you get to the point where these universities have mostly achieved parity in sports. So now what do they got to adjudicate with Title IX? And we're going to start doing the human resources thing with it, right? We're going to start involving ourselves in university campus conflicts over alleged sexual misconduct. And then you got the Clary Act and the 2011 Dear Colleague letter and all of the crap that's going on now with allegations of sexual misconduct and harassment and stalking and stuff like that being used to kick men off of university campuses and take their educations away entirely without due process and without actually providing them any recourse, no appeal, no nothing. Even when there is sometimes evidence that they were the victim of an incident rather than the perpetrator, as the accuser stated. And there are hundreds of due process lawsuits that have resulted from this. The courts have had to order universities to provide accused young men with better access to representation and ability to defend themselves against these allegations, basically to respect their right to due process, and so on. So there's been quite a bit there. It's migrated. It's had mission creep out the wazoo for the last 50 years, and it should have actually ended when it was passed. Right? Once the schools started eliminating academic quotas, there was no reason to continue to have Title IX. Like it's just completely unnecessary now. Meredith G also points out what most people don't get is the quotas were really concerned about giving spots to women who were likely only in college to get their MRS degree and would never use their degrees. That's another fact. Back in the day, in fact, women used to joke about it. Oh yeah, I went to university to get my MRS degree. Back when it only cost, a few $1,000s as opposed to tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands to go to university. And they would participate in sports for fun, but they weren't necessarily going on to any, guys in university athletics. A lot of them were looking to attract recruiters for pro teams, especially in football and basketball, baseball, right? Anything where you could become a professional player. And they might get a degree in something related to their passion, like make themselves able to become a gym teacher if they didn't go pro, if they couldn't go pro, right? But they'd go into sports medicine, something along those lines. A lot of women just wanted to participate in sports because it was fun and challenging, and that's fine, but it doesn't merit forcing schools to get rid of men's athletic teams because you couldn't get enough women up for a powder puff football team. Let's see. Do we have any further? I don't think we have any further super chows that I can see. So I'm gonna put done here. And if we get one after this, I think we're gonna have to read it on the after show. So I'm not gonna continue to the next page. We finished page 1, and we'll start page 2 next week. And it's more of the same. Like you look at this, there's pages and pages, and it's all DEI. Huh?
I'm just commenting on how fucking long this is going to take.
We'll see. We might not have as much to say about later ones because we said it about the earlier ones that were almost the same.
But yeah, this will do. We got to find something to talk about.
There's plenty of things
other than the shit everyone else is talking about, and
yeah. At some point in the future, we are going to have to talk about Iran because there's a history, and that history needs to be talked about, and it needs to be talked about in reference to our discussions about voting rights and war. But we're not going to do that right now. There's some people I would like to bring on to talk, and I haven't had an opportunity to organize that or to organize my research so that I'll be able to actually go back and forth between the things that I want to show people and all that. It's just been too crazy here, so I've been putting that off. But eventually we will have that discussion because it's something that people really need to understand when they talk about who should be president, who should be the commander-in-chief of the U.S. military, what we should be doing in response to what other countries are doing, and so on. And
And what all of this has to do with men's rights? Does it have anything to do with men's rights? Yeah, a little bit.
Well, the fact that anytime we involve ourselves in a military conflict and the phrase boots on the ground gets tossed around, they're talking about men. They're not talking about empty sets of boots. They're not talking about men and women, because there's almost never women sent into combat. In fact, historically, women have not been sent into combat by the United States. Women may in the future get sent into combat, but right now, there's almost no women even qualified to get sent into combat. It's men. Boots on the ground means men. Right? And so it's a men's issue. If people don't like hearing that, that's fine. You go listen to some namby-pamby wussy little show about makeup or some shit. But when we talk about this stuff, we're talking about the impact on men. Right? This stuff that we've been talking about today. You know who's funding all of that with their tax dollars? You know who gets taxed in the United States and doesn't get jack shit back? Men.
Is it women?
It is definitely not women.
Oh man, is it men? Oh man.
So close, Mike.
Social services, most social programs that get funded, that give out prizes, right? You know, gibs, are reserved for women, or are reserved in a way that women are most likely to qualify, because you have to have custody of children, and women are more likely than men to have custody of children, right? So women always have access to those if they meet the qualifications other than gender. Gender doesn't disqualify them, but for men, no. You know, most of the time, men get lint in their pockets. They get jack shit. They get nothing. I mean, only women get to do the sobbing for cash and prizes thing. Our man gave us $50 USD just now. Thank you very much for that. And said, at Hannah, I just got a new book in that I believe you and Allison might take an interest in. Maybe you've heard of it. It's called Satanic Feminism. The author, a man at that, speaks about from a perspective as if he approved of it. Interesting. Satanic feminism sounds like, well, there's atheist feminism that I've heard of. And I actually infiltrated a feminist atheist group on Facebook for a little while looking for material, but they were so fake and gay that there wasn't really much of anything. Like, it was so pathetic and lame. There wasn't anything to talk about.
We've been warned for a long time that Satan would take a form that is pleasing to the eye, and for so many generations, it hadn't occurred to people that form would be feminine.
Yeah. Yeah, I was expecting a tub of ice cream. Look, it's the devil. All I did was touch it and it put 20 pounds on my butt. Yeah, feminism is satanic by nature. It is. You cannot hate and not be satanic by nature. You cannot hate an entire demographic of human beings just for being part of that demographic, just for being born that way.
To be honest,
and not be satanic by nature.
I thought you were about to say you cannot hate the feminine, and that's sort of the point.
Yeah.
It's so difficult for men to hate women, and that's why Satan came to Earth in the form of women.
Yeah,
because Satan knew that men cannot hate women, pretty much no matter what happens. That's what I mean by Satan taking a form that is pleasing to the eye and indeed pleasing to all the senses. The problem with Satan is that you can't hate it. I was about to say him, but I'm pretty sure Satan is a woman.
Well, the fun part
I know
about
the Bible says he
angels,
isn't, but I don't believe the Bible. I think the Bible fucked up just like modern day gynocentrism fucks up. I think Satan was always female.
the fun part about angels is that they appear to be able to choose how they present, because like the Bible has that in heaven they are neither male nor female, but then the statement that there were giants in those days was a result of the sons of heaven laying with the daughters of men. Well, if in heaven they are neither male nor female, but they can impregnate women, that indicates that they can morph. So if they could morph into something male, they could morph into something female. And I would imagine, because the devil is supposed to be the father of lies, to be able to morph into something. I'm sure that the entity that is the personification of all evil can present as anything it wants to, like just anything it wants to, and you wouldn't recognize it by how it looked. You would recognize it by what it does.
The God that has brought us into the most prosperous age of all history is a male God, and I don't think that's a coincidence. I think once we learned that I don't want to talk about worship, but once we learned some kind of discipline that reveres the masculine, that was when we brought ourselves out of the Stone Age. And because before then we did have deities. We did worship certain female deities, and they were the den females, the goddesses that we made fat statuettes of.
Yeah, back when childbirth looked like something magic.
Yeah,
and nobody understood how it happened.
And as much as I revere polytheistic religions, and I try to hold monotheistic, dare I say, patriarchal religions to a high standard, I think it's no coincidence that we got this far through a religion that that has a male god. I think it has its positive points. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. Oh, Meredith G says she did send a super chow, but it hasn't gone through. So I will thank you for the super chow. I'll have to read it. I know usually Meredith says honey for the badgers, but I'll bet there's probably more to it this time because we've had so much we talked about. But in any case, I think you really have a point about revering the masculine. Once upon a time, when we didn't understand as much about biology, childbirth probably looked like magic. But what men have done throughout history to build and advance the physical aspects of civilization, we're not even touching on the advancements of the social aspects, ideas about freedom and accountability and responsibility and different ways of government and so on. But just talking about having a structure to our community so that we have safe places to live, and we're not rained on every night, and we're not subject to being picked up by tornadoes and killed. We're not dealing with a lack of food because we have no way of getting it. We have farms, we have all of agriculture, we have all of medicine, we have everything that has been built, every physical thing that has been built to make that work. All of the various machines that we use, all of the various systems for providing us with things like electricity, transporting our goods to and from, and so on. All of that stems from masculinity.
It's easy to say that all our problems came from when the intellect overrode the emotion. Sargon recently made a documentary called "The Death of Man" about how the Enlightenment created this clockwork universe that took over from the God-based universe, and that's why we've plunged ourselves into a sort of hell. But at the same time, like, we used to live in hell. In the Stone Age, we lived in hell. People died from any given disease anywhere, and even if you had a toothache, you would fucking die. But then, intellectuality brought us out of the quagmire of the emotional. But then, intellectuality plunged us into a different kind of quagmire, and I'm like, well, let's find a middle ground between that involves intellectuality and emotionality, the spiritual and the I don't know, whatever the foil is to spirituality. let's work the best of all worlds, shall we? I think we can do it as long as we stop simping for women. I think we can do it.
Meredith G said, the rest of the chat was, remember, you can't be a perma victim if you can be held accountable for your actions. Absolutely true. That's stellar. And yeah, you know, the way that I would think about people's take on intellectualism is this. If you have cancer, right? So you've got your lungs are full of tumors, or your like in my family history, your colon is full of tumors, whatever. Part of the body. Cancer is horrible no matter where it hits you. Say you don't know you have it. Will not knowing that you have it help you? And are you upset? You're upset when you find out, right? You're upset when you discover that you have it. It's terrifying. And you always have this doubt, you know, what happens if this doesn't work? Is it going to keep growing? And, you know, my own body's turned against me. Is it going to kill me? But if you don't find out, you don't get a chance to put a stop to it. Right? Intellectualism was, it evolved around humans trying to figure out how things worked and how to make the best of how things work, take advantage of it, and to work with it instead of being victimized by it. So we learned everything from you know, how to make plants grow where and when and how we want them to how to build structures that could resist high winds and flooding, to ways of using the wind to transport ourselves and our stuff. You know, like it's we learned how to navigate water, which, you know, the power of water is amazing. It's hard to compete between wind and water for which one is more fascinating and how it works, right? And how it can be destructive or how we can make use of it. And men figured all of that out to improve the lives of their communities, the people around them, and themselves as well. And what if we could fly? We could get places faster. We could get places that are farther away. What if we could ride on the water without sinking into it and dying? We could get places farther away than we can get just with a cart. We could go places that are on the other side of the water where there's no land connection. You know, men figured those things out so they could explore. They could get things that weren't available at home. They could trade and so on. And to claim that it is bad because it also led to conflict and arguments over those things is to ignore all of the benefits. Right? We just have to figure out how to navigate the human psyche. It's a little bit harder because you can't see it. But once we do that, we can figure out how to have peaceful ways of settling those conflicts all the time, which I think would be the next step for humanity, if we can get there. And of course, it's not going to happen if we listen to the National Organization for Women. Everything has to be about conflict for them. In any case, it is 9:30 and we should be moving on to the patron-only after show, which, if you want to be involved in our patron-only after shows, the thing to do is to go to honeybadgerbrigade.com, go to the top of the page. There's a drop-down menu, the three little lines for the menu symbol. It's on a lot of different websites. And you can find feedthebadger.com. And that is where you can look at your options, decide what level of membership, what level of involvement you want to have. And there are different levels. Some will get you involved in the Discord only. Some will get you involved in the after shows. Some will get you a higher level of participation, multiple after shows, and so on. You just kind of have to look at what's in your budget, what you want to do, and make your own decisions, because that's what we're all about, making your own decisions. Very, very, very misogynistic, that, right? So you want to join the misogyny club and make your own decisions. Like I said, go to honeybadgerbrigade.com, open up that drop-down menu, and you'll be able to find feedthebadger.com, or just go directly to feedthebadger.com. Either way. And it'll help us out a lot, and you'll get to be part of our discussions. Right now, our patron-only after-show discussions have revolved around a conversation that I had with Grok, and whether or not the men's rights movement in engaging in these types of conversations with AI can expand and influence the information set that AI draws from in order to have its conversations, which would be nice, considering that right now most search engines sort of hide things from you if they're not politically correct, and AI might, if it advances to the point where it isn't necessarily controlled anymore by its originators, or it isn't controlled by, say, Google and the types of people that work with Google, it might actually make information more available to people that has been hidden up to this point. So it's a little odd and cerebral and experimental, and it's a bit questioning and everything, but it is a fun conversation, and we'll be continuing that tonight. So if you want to be part of stuff like that, like I said, go to honeybadgerbrigade.com, or go to feedthebadger.com. And with that, I will say thanks to everybody for listening. Thanks to my two co-hosts for going through this whiny crap with me. And thanks to everybody who works in the background to make this happen. I didn't introduce Brian at the beginning like I have been. Thanks, Brian, for making it so we can do this and have the vertical.
Is Brian still here? Hi, Brian. Thank you, Brian. God,
yes.
Thank you.
If you're watching on the vertical, the only reason you're able to do that is because of Brian, because I have not taken the time to learn how to do whatever it is he does that allows us to stream to YouTube twice at the same time. So I needed a man's help. And with that, we will see you all next Thursday. Good night.
Men's rights activists are machines, dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. holy shit, you're fucked.